How do you, how do you get your spouse on board to homestead? And you can't. So we have talked about this multiple times before, both here on YouTube and on my blog. Here's Chatty Cathy back there. Chatty Elizabeth. But I did a whole series on women farmers and homesteaders, and then I also did a video, which I'll link up here, about being a strong and independent woman homesteader. But I wanted to do another video because this morning I actually received a phone call from somebody who has been following us on YouTube for a while and who has been a follower of my blog for a while, and she was saying how she just got into homesteading, and she's really excited about it. I mean, I could feel her excitement on the other end of the line, and but her husband is just not on board with it right now. And you know, I get that, because I have a husband who isn't necessarily all hardcore into the homestead thing either. But I've said this before, and you know, this depends on people's situations and their circumstances and their finances. It all depends on those factors. You know, not every single person is the same. Not every single marriage is the same, and not every single family is the same. But, you know, I am asked a lot, because I am the face of the Fewell Homestead. I am what you see. And, you know, even though I've pulled back a little bit, you know, it's not just me here. While Junior and I, you know, Junior just recently, in the past 4 or 5 months, has taken on a lot of the chores that I was doing. So he's 7 years old. He's doing this all on his own. He's feeding the chickens, tending to the chickens. Now I'm still cleaning the coop out, just because I want to make sure it's clean. He is tending to the quail and the rabbits. He's getting new rabbits in a couple of weeks, right before Christmas, from a family friend that's coming down from Michigan. You know, he's taken on a big role, and the best part is that I don't have to ask him to do it anymore. I don't have to remind him that he has chores to do outside. He gets up, and I'll say, okay, go let the chickens out, and he's out here and he's doing it, and he's feeding the animals, and they're all alive still. So, you know, he did have some training before, and as with any child, but he's doing a lot of the work now. You know, some people have said, well, why doesn't your husband help you? Well, he does help me. He helps me a lot. See that big red chicken coop back there? He built that whole thing. See the little mini coop right here? He built that. This fence, you can't see it, but it's like the fence behind me. It's a fence in front of me. It spans across our entire property. It cuts our property in half. Because it wasn't, you know, we didn't have that. We didn't want the chickens and stuff in the front yard. And you know what? He took an entire weekend and put our money into it, and put his hard labor into it, and built this beautiful fence row that cuts it. Our house is in between the fence. So there's one side of the house is a fence, very much like this one, with a large open gate, double gate. And then the other side, there's a fence with a single gate. And it has wire on it, not chicken wire. It has, you know, the really thick wire on it that you would use for like goats and stuff. And he took a whole weekend and he built that for me. And you know, so he does a lot. He might not do a lot on a daily basis, but guess what? He works, and I mean, I work too, but he works outside of the home, and he works his butt off to provide for our family. And so I'm okay with him not helping day-to-day stuff. You know, if I have something really big that needs to be moved, he's there. No question about it. If I'm sick, like sick, which is very unusual, very. But like I had surgery on my wrist a couple of years ago, and I didn't have to ask him. He just said, okay, you're not going down there to do it, and he did it. If I'm home late one night, before Junior started doing chores, he would go put the chickens up for me, put all the animals up for me. And, you know, so it works for us. It works because he's an outdoorsman, but he's not right here, right now, a farm guy. He has skills beyond belief. And he has more skills than I do. If we want to talk about skill sets, he's the guy. You know, hunting and fishing and prepping and preparedness and stuff like that, that's him. I want him on my team if the crap hits the fan one day, you know? So that's the only reason I married him. I'm just kidding. I'm kind of just kidding. Besides the fact that he's really hot, but anyhow. So, you know, Mark and I have been married almost 11 years. This is 2016, so March 2017 we'll have been married 11 years. This was not our dream when we first got married. And so when we moved to this property, we're only on a half acre. You guys know the story. Most of you know the story. I started getting into holistic medicine and, you know, healthier living, though I still have a long way to go. When Junior was diagnosed with childhood asthma at the age of 1. And so we kind of started that journey then. And okay, so for the record, he said, I mentioned it once, but then about a year later, he's like, okay, let's get some chickens. I didn't want chickens. I was like, no, I'm not ready for chickens yet. But he was ready for it. He was ready for it. And so we had 2 chickens before we ever had a chicken coop. Don't do that. We had them in a little pen, like a makeshift pen, and we got some chickens. At one point, we had over 50 chickens on this small half acre. We'll never do that again. It's too small to free range 50 chickens, but we did it. We learned. And then he wanted to get rabbits. Rabbits were supposed to be his thing. I did not want rabbits, but he wanted rabbits, and he thought he was going to breed them. Well, it never happened because he's not a farm animal guy, okay? He had so many other things that he was doing that rabbits was not a priority on his list. So I took on the rabbit project, and I really enjoyed it, and I still enjoy it. And Junior, that's probably why Junior's getting into it now too. But, so I don't want to say he allows me to have this homestead here, because it's not true. You know, it's not like a, oh no, you can't do it kind of thing. But at the same time, we're a team, first and foremost. Before the homesteading adventure, we took that vow and we said, okay, for better, for worse, and your life is my life, and we share everything. And my motto, the one thing I have always said to people is, you know, that are struggling with a spouse not wanting to homestead is, you know, my spouse, it's not that he doesn't want to homestead. That's not true. He fully supports us homesteading, and he believes in what we're trying to build here. He believes in a self-sufficient lifestyle. That's just true. But he would like to have a bigger space on which to do it. And I get that. I understand that. But my thing was, well, why not do what we can where we are, since the goal is self-sufficiency, and it takes a while to get to that point. And he was like, okay. So he was on board with that part. But my thing that I've always told people is, don't ever feel like you have the right to force someone to do something that they don't want to do. We have compromised over the past 5 or so years. We've compromised over the past 11 years on a lot of things. But we have compromised on this whole homesteading journey. Again, he fully supports it. That's not the issue here. The issue is that he just doesn't, you know, it's just not really his thing. And yet it is. It's hard to explain. He fully supports me and my journey and my passion of wanting to homestead. I mean, I didn't grow up on a farm, but my grandparents had a cattle farm, and I was always into, hi, I was always into farming. I mean, even as a kid, I had these play sets, farm play sets I would get every year for Christmas, and I loved it. I loved farming. So you could say it was in my DNA, and I have not ever wanted to go away from it, but he has never forced me to not pursue my passion, especially when he knows that it benefits his family, benefits us in the long run. He has never, and I'm the same for him, I have never forced him to do something that he doesn't want to do. I mean, because that's just, why do that? The other part of this is that he does do a lot. Like I said, he builds our coops, and he loves woodworking. He loves building things. That's his profession. He just loves doing that stuff. But he loves supporting us as well, you know? So when I say that, you know, in the link when I've said, you know, I'm a strong and independent homesteader, I am. But the reality is that I couldn't do what I'm doing without him. Not to the extent that I am. You know, if I didn't have his help on income, and if I didn't have his help on building these things, I'd have to do it. It would take me 10 times longer, or I'd have to hire somebody to do it. I wouldn't have necessarily as much of an income to have all the animals that we have, but we would make do with what we had. You know, and those are things that we think about too. What would happen if something happened to him? Or if he got sick or he wasn't able to work. And so those are things that I have to think about too. And I know those are things that he thinks about. You know, men think logically, and I've always said that. Men think so much more logically than women. But moral of the story, long story short, how do you get your spouse on board to homestead? And you can't. I mean, you can show them the facts, and you can give them the facts on all the good stuff and all the money it could save you and all the health benefits. But you can't force anyone to do anything that they don't want to do. You can compromise. I highly encourage relationships where you think differently and yet you are mature enough to compromise. I believe every good marriage is full of compromising, which we do every single day. But to coerce your spouse into homesteading, I just don't think it's possible. That's something that they just might have to see with their own eyes, and you might just have to show them that you can do it, and that it's beneficial. And again, each and every person's situation is different. I want to expand in the new year, but we need more land. Some people think that you can just up and buy more land, and that's just not true. We want to be in a financial situation where we are ready to take on that extra amount of payment each month, because where we are now, we have a very low mortgage. So taking on an extra mortgage and selling our house and going through all that, you know, it's not as if we had no debt. I mean, we have one credit card debt that we're paying off, but which is pretty much completely paid off. I think there's only like a couple $100 left, but you know, we just want to be in a place where we're comfortable enough to say, this is God's will, and we want to move forward on this. And I fully support him in that mindset, because I'm in the same mindset. But we compromise. I think that's the biggest thing. So the title of this video is what to do when your spouse doesn't want to homestead. You see my roosters fighting back there? And my suggestion to you would be one of two things. Either figure out why. What is the issue? Why don't they want to homestead? And kind of work from there. Or two, compromise and say, okay, listen, I get it, but maybe I can get 6 chickens and we can start there. And I can show you the benefits that we're getting from these animals, and how many eggs we're getting a week that saves us at the grocery store, or how much joy it brings to our lives to learn a simpler lifestyle. Or maybe you get a goat and say, you know what, we go through a lot of dairy, and maybe we get a goat and I can show you how raw milk benefits your body and heals your gut and gives you a healthier lifestyle option, and brings joy once again to our family. Maybe say, let me prove to you that this is awesome. But I don't want anyone to ever think that you can just force someone to do something, because it's just not true. I encourage you to encourage your spouse, whether they're on board or not on board, because you ultimately made that vow and decision to be with this person. And I believe that with a little bit of compromise, that any marriage could sustain a difference in opinion when it comes to homesteading. Don't go all out. Don't get a cow and a goat and chickens and pigs and everything all at one time. I think one of the biggest things with husbands is that they believe that we're going to get all these things and then they're going to get stuck with the chores, because that happens a lot. That happens a lot with a lot of homesteaders. They get stuck with doing something they never wanted to do. And so I think maybe that's where a lot of setback comes, is because they don't want to do something that they don't want to do, and yet they don't trust you enough to make that decision on your own. So a lot of issues are trust issues, and proving that these are things that you can do, and you can do them. I promise you, just because you're a woman, if you're a woman, that you can do them on your own. It's very, very simple. You don't need a farm to homestead. You need what you need to homestead. We don't, even if we had 20 acres, we wouldn't have that many animals. You don't even need animals to homestead, is the beauty of homesteading. You can teach yourself skill sets and gardening and little things like that make a huge impact on your family. First and foremost, before you get into anything, take control of your health. Take control of your health by changing your diet, growing a garden, using essential oils and herbal remedies, making tinctures, drying your own herbs. Start with that. When you can take control of that and take responsibility of that, then move into a bigger garden and canning and fermenting. And then after that, move into animals. Because you might find that with all the canning and fermenting and things like that, you don't really need a lot of animals. You might only need a few chickens for eggs, and you might only need 20 meat birds a year, because I think we often forget that meat is a luxury. It's not something that our bodies require on a regular basis. And so that's what we have found. We have found that besides the fact that we hunt a lot, that we just don't need a huge meat source on our homestead. So a lot of it's just eggs and then the rabbits. We do have the rabbits, but they're kind of for meat and sell. And then we have a garden every year, which is expanding every single year. It's growing. Homesteading is a process. And so don't get discouraged if your spouse isn't immediately on board. It happens. It does happen. It happens a lot more than you realize, because what's happening is women are rising up, and they are realizing the benefit of homesteading, because they want a healthier family, and they want to pass on these skill sets to their kids that either they had or maybe they didn't have and wanted to have growing up. So don't get discouraged. It will come. I promise. Hey, I have a little chicken pecking at me. And encourage your spouse. First and foremost, through it all, just encourage them. Say, I hear you. Maybe you could hear me. And then maybe we can compromise on something. So, the nagging thing doesn't work. Trust me. I've been nagging for goats for years. It just doesn't work. But anyhow, so that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, please ask. If you have not liked and subscribed, please do. We're not here a lot, but I try to get a couple videos up each month now. And otherwise, thank you for watching, and happy homesteading.